a coalition of very odd organizations that is now trying to pull together an effort to block the Convention of States. It includes the John Birch Society. It includes Eagle Forum, among others. It also includes AFSCME, Common Cause, Democracy 21. See, we're starting to get the attention of our enemies, ladies and gentlemen, because 10 states have now adopted the resolution. In many cases, we've been under the radar for a while. And the headline in this piece that I'll read to you in the next hour is The Battle to Preserve the Constitution. So the very forces that have undermined the Constitution, particularly on the left, the very forces that laugh at the Constitution, the very forces that call our founders and framers slave owners and leave it at that, they claim to be battling to preserve the Constitution. They have no intention of preserving the Constitution. They don't even believe in the Constitution. They believe in a centralized, iron-fisted government with a massive bureaucracy to endlessly torment us. We are sick and tired of what's going on, and you frauds and you phonies, if you're in the way, then we intend to plow you by too, with your phony arguments and your scare tactics. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a bruising battle, a very, very bruising battle. A battle over efforts to call a constitutional convention. It's not a constitutional convention. The Constitution itself calls it Convention of States. And let me just say as an aside, states used to meet all the time. They're called meetings. Meetings. States would send delegates to have meetings where they could discuss things of concern, things they needed to resolve, and things that are of shared interests. That's essentially what it is. And in this case, the states agree in advance how many delegates each state legislature will send. And they agree in advance what the general subject matter is going to be. And why does the left oppose this? Because they're perfectly happy with the deconstruction of the Constitution based on the kind of governmental system that they have succeeded in imposing on us. Most experts agree, however, that once a constitutional convention is called, the actions of the convention could not be limited in advance to any particular issue. That is false. And the delegates would be able to consider any other constitutional amendments they wish to adopt. That is false. And then he puts in a parenthetical in parentheses. Amendments adopted by the convention would then go to the states for ratification. That seems to be a big point, doesn't it? Otherwise, whatever's done at that convention of states is utterly and completely meaningless, because it still has to be ratified. As the late Chief Justice Warren Burger explained, and now they like Warren Burger, there's no way to effectively limit or muzzle the actions of a constitutional convention. The convention could make its own rules and set its own agenda. No, the state legislatures make the rules and set the agenda. The state legislatures are in charge. The state legislatures can pull back their delegates. But in the end, the state legislatures have to ratify, 38 of them. So what do you mean there's no way to control it? This means, writes Wertheimer, a complete propagandist, that calling a constitutional convention would open the door to a runaway convention in which all of the constitutional rights provided the American people would be up for grabs. I think Mr. Wertheimer is confusing the Supreme Court, run by left-wing activists, with a convention of states, which is limited. Tell me, what are the limits on the Supreme Court, effectively? And what are the limits on a president more and more as we go through year after year of presidential power? What are the limits on the bureaucracy? You want to talk about limits? This is a joke. We have an increasingly powerful centralized government making centralized decisions, imposing them with an army of bureaucrats, and they're worried about a convention of the states authorized under Article 5 of the Constitution, and anything that occurs there needs 38 state legislatures or conventions in 38 states to ratify, which means 13 states can stop anything. And they all run away, run away. Tell me, who can stop the Supreme Court? Tell me, who can stop the EPA? The late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia made clear his concerns about having a constitutional convention by stating, quote, I certainly would not want a constitutional convention. Woo, who knows what would come out of it, unquote. That's funny, because they cherry-picked that, because Scalia was a big proponent of it. Who were the other proponents? There have been many. First of all, the framers of the Constitution. Secondly, the ratifiers of the Constitution. But people who have supported, who actually care about constitutional government, like Milton Friedman, like Everett Dirksen, like Dwight David Eisenhower. The framers of the Constitution put it in there 2 days before the end of the Constitutional Convention. It was needed in there, too, and it was ratified by the states. So the very people who are saying, oh, we'll run away this and that, they're attacking the Constitution right out of the box. Proponents of a constitutional convention are led by ALEC, an organization that includes conservative state legislators and major corporations. No, it's not led by ALEC. It's led by you. Local Tea Party groups are also active in the states. Yes, and many, many others. There's also a national coalition working to prevent a constitutional convention. Groups providing leadership for the coalition include the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities, radical left-wing group, Common Cause, nothing common about their cause, ASME, the Government Union, Democracy 21, a radical kook front organization. Coalitions also been joined in some states by local conservative organizations, including gun rights groups. There's one crazy nutjob gun right group that's been raising a fortune off this. The Eagle Forum, yes, unfortunately it has declined, and I believe concerned Women for America. This ongoing battle will continue to be fought during the remainder of the 28 election cycle and beyond if necessary. A constitutional convention would wreak havoc in the country. It would open up the nation's charter and all the constitutional... What a bunch of clowns. Our first and only constitutional convention took place in 1787. George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton will not be available to serve as delegates if a second constitutional convention is called. It needs to be prevented. Well, ladies and gentlemen, who do you think put that clause in the Constitution? George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and the rest of them. And in Federalist Papers, Alexander Hamilton specifically points to this, to try and convince the anti-federalists in the states, because they were having trouble with ratification, that if push comes to shove, the states have the power. They have the power to keep this new federal government, the national government, in check. And he pointed to Article 5. Before the Civil War, when states were talking about nullification and secession, well before the Civil War, but still, Madison was alive. He wrote in his letter against nullification and against secession, and he pointed to Article 5. He said the states can use Article 5, not on the issue of slavery, but he was saying to uphold aspects of state sovereignty. They hate Article 5, Convention of States, because they know that's the way for us to control what's going on. We're going to get the same pushback by the rhinos. We're going to get the same pushback by these fringe groups, by these left-wing groups, and by the media. So be ready. And I'm telling you, we have 10 states right now. If we can get to 20, well short of 34, but if we get 20, now we'll have their attention. Now we'll have their attention, and they'll know how damn serious we are. It'll make the nationalist populist, the Trump election, all the rest of it look like Mickey Mouse. Because then they'll know that we have figured out how to restore our constitutional republic. But this is how they're going to know we mean business. Because it doesn't matter who we elect to the Senate, who we elect to the House, who we elect as president. It doesn't matter how big the federal bureaucracy is. It doesn't matter who's on the courts. This is how we, through our state legislatures, true federalism, true 10th Amendment, true constitutionalism, Convention of States, this is how we get our country back. Ladies and gentlemen, the country wasn't founded by the central government. The country was founded by the American people. The country was founded by the colonies, then the states. The colonies transitioned into states. The federal government was the last of it. The federal government was given birth by the states. And now we're told, forget the states. Ignore the states. The states can't be trusted. Well, runaway states. Well, my God, ladies and gentlemen, we have a runaway federal government. And if there's another idea, a better idea on how to fix this, I want to hear it. Should we elect Republicans to the House and Senate and a Republican president? Will that fix it? I don't think so. The answer is no. And the answer isn't in the federal government. Why do you think the framers put this in there? It's funny how they mention the framers of the Constitution. Nobody can do a better job than them. True. But we can do a better job than Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sotomayor and Breyer. They've changed the Constitution. We can do a better job than Schumer. He's changed the Constitution. The point is, the Constitution is not what was established in the first place. This is a post-constitutional period in many respects. And the framers were concerned, and the ratifiers were concerned that we would reach this point because they understood American history, they understood world history. Look at the way the Constitution is set up to prevent what? A centralized government getting out of control. What do we have right now? A centralized government getting out of control. They're so worried about our rights, Fred Wertheimer. Ask him about the Second Amendment and your right to bear arms. See what he really thinks about it. Ask him about freedom of speech and the right to spend money to elect an official who you want. See what he really thinks about it. Separation of powers. Did you hear Democracy 21 ever criticize Barack Obama for violating separation of powers? These people are frauds. Absolute, utter frauds. We have got to have the courage and the strength to do what our ancestors did before us. If you want liberty, then you got to take it. I'll be right back.
Sign the petition at cosaction.com and get as many of your friends and family to do the same. With your full address, your state legislators will know that you really are their constituents in their district. Our success depends on you. So we're inviting you to be part of history. Let's invoke the constitutional solution that's as big as the problem.